The ongoing war in Ukraine has become a defining moment in global geopolitics. As Russia's invasion continues, the stakes have never been higher for Ukraine, the West, and for Russia itself. Amid this chaos, the United States, under the leadership of President Donald Trump, is pushing for a peace deal that has raised eyebrows across the globe, one that seems to favor Moscow's territorial gains. But what does this mean for Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who has been at the forefront of this struggle? In this segment, we will unpack the delicate situation surrounding the peace deal that Trump is advocating, explore the dilemmas facing Zelenskyy, and break down the potential consequences of this controversial diplomatic initiative. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the war has dragged on with devastating consequences for the Ukrainian people. Thousands of lives have been lost, entire cities have been leveled, and millions have been displaced. Despite facing overwhelming odds, Ukraine has fought back fiercely, with major support from Western countries, including the United States, which has provided billions in military aid, including advanced weaponry, to help Ukraine defend its sovereignty. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, a former comedian turned wartime leader, has become the face of resistance. He has refused to compromise on Ukraine's territorial integrity, insisting that Russia must withdraw from all occupied territories, including Crimea, which was illegally annexed by Russia in 2014. However, in a surprising turn, President Donald Trump, the newly inaugurated 47th President of the United States, has proposed a peace plan for Ukraine. This proposal, which has been described as a 28-point peace deal, has raised significant concerns among Kyiv's leadership and the international community. Trump's peace plan has been met with widespread criticism, especially from Ukrainian officials and their European allies. The proposal reportedly offers Russia recognition of some of its territorial gains in exchange for a ceasefire. In short, it seeks to freeze the conflict at current lines, which would allow Russia to keep much of the territory it has taken since the invasion began. This is a deal that many in Ukraine would view as nothing short of capitulation. Ukrainian officials, including President Zelenskyy, have made it clear that they will not accept any peace agreement that involves the surrender of Ukrainian land. As Zelenskyy put it recently, we are working on the document prepared by the American side. This must be a plan that ensures a real and dignified peace. He emphasized that any peace deal must ensure the full restoration of Ukraine's borders, including the return of Crimea. This peace proposal, which some have described as being pro-Putin, has caused deep divisions between Ukraine and the United States, despite their long-standing alliance. Trump, who has long advocated for a reduction in US involvement in overseas conflicts, is taking a more hands-on approach with this peace plan, suggesting that Ukraine could accept a ceasefire and negotiate a frozen conflict, especially as the war continues to drag on. In private meetings, reports have surfaced that Trump is pressuring Zelenskyy to accept this deal. According to sources, Trump reportedly told the Ukrainian president, "You can't possibly win back any territory. You should try to give diplomacy another chance." This marks a sharp shift in the US stance toward Ukraine. For years, Washington has been firm in its support for Ukraine's sovereignty, emphasizing that Russia must withdraw from all occupied territories. However, Trump's rhetoric is now focused on bringing an end to the conflict, even if that means leaving parts of Ukrainian territory under Russian control. This puts Zelenskyy in a very difficult position. On one hand, he is facing immense pressure from the West, his most powerful ally, to accept a deal that could end the war and potentially save lives. On the other hand, accepting a deal that leaves Russian troops in Ukraine would be a massive political and diplomatic blow. Zelenskyy, known for his steadfast commitment to his country's territorial integrity, has expressed his deep reservations about any deal that would allow Russia to retain control over Ukrainian land. During a recent address, Zelenskyy said, "Who says he won't go further in a few years? Who can guarantee that?" His statement reflects the growing skepticism in Kyiv about the nature of any peace deal with Russia, particularly one brokered by the United States. While President Trump's administration continues to push for a resolution, European leaders are treading more cautiously. The European Union has been a vocal supporter of Ukraine throughout the conflict, and the bloc has provided substantial financial and military assistance to Kyiv. However, there is a growing concern among European leaders that the US plan, as it stands, could reward Russia for its illegal invasion of Ukraine. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom have all expressed reservations about any deal that would allow Russia to maintain control over Ukrainian territory. The European Union's message is clear. It supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and any peace agreement must reflect that principle. In a joint statement, the leaders of Germany, France, and the UK underscored the importance of a just and lasting peace, one that does not reward Russian aggression. European diplomats have stated that they are willing to help facilitate peace talks, but they will not back a settlement that undermines Ukraine's territorial claims. For Zelenskyy, the situation is increasingly complex. He must balance Ukraine's long-term goals with the immediate need for peace. The war has taken a heavy toll on the Ukrainian people, and as the conflict drags on, there are growing concerns about the long-term economic and humanitarian costs. The Ukrainian military, while resilient, is facing significant strain, and the Russian military continues to control large swathes of Ukrainian territory. Despite this, Zelenskyy has made it clear that he will not accept a deal that sacrifices Ukraine's territorial integrity. He has stated that any peace agreement must guarantee the return of all occupied territories, including Crimea, which was illegally annexed by Russia in 2014. As Zelenskyy remarked, this is not about winning or losing. It is about our land and our dignity. This sentiment is widely shared among the Ukrainian people, many of whom have lost loved ones and their homes in the war. From a strategic standpoint, Zelenskyy faces two competing pressures: the need to secure peace and the desire to maintain Ukraine's territorial integrity. He understands that a protracted war with no end in sight could spell disaster for his country. On the other hand, ceding land to Russia would be a historic defeat for Ukraine and would set a dangerous precedent for other territorial disputes around the world. As Ukraine continues to fight on the battlefield, Zelenskyy's diplomatic strategy remains focused on securing support from Europe and the US, ensuring that any peace deal upholds Ukraine's sovereignty. He has called for more weapons, more financial support, and more diplomatic backing to help Ukraine achieve its war aims. At the same time, he is exploring all avenues for peace, including working on the US peace proposal and adjusting it to Ukraine's needs. But the political ramifications are significant. If Zelenskyy rejects the US peace plan, there is a risk that Ukraine could face diplomatic isolation, especially if other Western allies, including the US, begin to shift their focus away from supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity. This is something Zelenskyy and his team are acutely aware of as they weigh their options. As the war enters its fourth year, there is no clear end in sight. The battlefield remains fluid, with both sides taking heavy casualties. Russia, despite its initial setbacks, continues to hold large swaths of Ukrainian territory, and there are fears that the war could drag on indefinitely. For President Zelenskyy, the coming months will be crucial. His commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty remains firm, but the pressure to negotiate a peace deal that halts the bloodshed is mounting. The US proposal, however, remains a controversial point of contention. If Trump's plan is the only viable option for peace, Zelenskyy will have to decide whether to risk Ukraine's long-term security for the sake of a short-term ceasefire. Ultimately, Zelenskyy's course of action will be determined by the broader geopolitical context. With Europe's support, Ukraine may be able to push back against any settlement that undermines its territorial integrity. But if Kyiv finds itself isolated, the pressure to accept a deal that favors Russia could become too great to resist. The next steps in this diplomatic drama will have profound consequences, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire international order. Zelenskyy's leadership will be tested in the coming months as he faces a pivotal moment in the history of his nation. Can he secure a just peace, or will the forces of diplomacy and military realities push him into a deal he cannot accept?